Hey everybody, so I wanted to do a video on my garden planning for 2026. I've been working on this for the last 3 or 4 weeks, just on and off, about what I would like to plant. Kason built me 2 raised garden beds, and I believe that video is already up on my YouTube. We just went to Home Depot and bought a bunch of wood, and Kason put them together, and it was a little bit of a learning curve just because it was our first time building them. But once the first one got done, we kind of learned what to do a little bit better for the second one, and then our plan is to build 2 more raised beds after that. And so that video is up on my YouTube, so go and check that out if y'all are interested to see what all he did. And well, I helped a little bit, but he did the majority of the heavy lifting. And then inside those raised beds, I haven't gotten any soil yet. I've only put like a bunch of cardboard down. So we built them like the week after Christmas. Essentially, it was like a week and a half after Christmas. And there was a ton of cardboard between my house and my mom's house. So I broke down all that cardboard. I didn't do any cardboard that had almost like a plasticky like overlay on it, like a bunch of different colors and stuff like that. But I did use like just regular cardboard, and there was a lot. So I filled the bottom of the 2 beds with that. My plan is to fill the next level with like a bunch of leaves and sticks and wood and things from the woods around us to kind of build it up. That way we're not having to spend so much money on filling the entire bed with soil. We can fill like almost 50% of the bed with soil, because although we'll have some root vegetables, most of the root vegetables aren't going to need soil all the way to the bottom. And I can't remember what that's called, like when you do raised beds like that, like where you layer it with cardboard and wood and sticks and leaves. We're also going to use any of like the chicken bedding that we've already kind of dumped in the woods. I dump it in the same spot, so there's like a mound of it, and it's been like that since this time, or almost this time last year. So it's been almost a year, and obviously some of it's still new, like that I'm dumping, so it's still kind of hot. But I'm gonna put it in there, and then I'm gonna put the soil on top of that, so it shouldn't bother the plants, because the plants aren't being planted right on top of the chicken bedding, and some of the chicken bedding is a year old almost, so that we've dumped. So it's not going to be a problem, I don't think. I would never put like fresh chicken bedding that we clean out of the chicken coop on top of the soil where we're planting plants. I would always let it cool off for at least 6 months. Okay. So then after I get the raised beds filled up, like I said, right now we only have 2. They are 4x8. And that is a pretty good space for raised beds. They're also 2 foot tall. I didn't want them to be super low to the ground. I also didn't want them to be super, super tall. Like, I'm 5 foot. So I didn't want them to be too tall to where like I couldn't really work the bed that well. But these are like the perfect height where I'm not going to be like bending over a whole lot. I won't really need to use like my kneeling pad. Like, everything's going to be right at my hip level. And I think that it's going to work really well. We also spaced it, I believe, enough that we can do a cow panel trellis for things like cantaloupes and sweet peas and things like that, that will be vining, squash varieties, watermelon, even though watermelon are super heavy if you don't get like the sugar baby watermelons, I believe that they're called. The sugar baby watermelons would probably be okay, as long as you like do some sort of basket or hammock for them to rest in, just like you would do for cantaloupe, because you don't want that to fall off the vine, because they do get a little bit heavy. We also would be able to use the cow panel trellis on the inside of each bed if we wanted to for indeterminate tomatoes, because indeterminate tomatoes, you want to give them space to grow and do their own thing. They like to grow up and out, whereas like determinate tomatoes, they only grow to a certain height. Indeterminate, they're not determined by height or width. They're just going to keep growing and growing. Determinate tomatoes, they pretty much have a stopping point. They only get to a certain height. They only get to a certain like width, in the sense of like the vines or the stalks kind of only grow out to a certain point. So, but we would be able to put indeterminate tomatoes, and a lot of, I feel like cherry tomatoes are indeterminate tomatoes, and I do love cherry tomatoes. I believe like really the only tomatoes we eat fresh like that around like year round, which I mean, if you buy a tomato in the grocery store in January, it's gonna basically be like water because it's out of season in most places. If you get it at a grocery store and they're buying it from like a different country and it's being shipped here, well, it's probably been sitting on a truck or something like that, and a lot of the nutrients. Now, we do still eat some of that stuff, just in moderation, whereas in the summer, we're more likely to eat like salads or throw those into like pasta salad and things like that, and they do taste a lot better. And this will be really my first full year at this new house doing a garden. So last year I only had a few green stalks up, which are the vertical gardens. And I'm also going to be talking about what I'm doing with those as well, because I do have plans. They all need to be topped off with like worm castings, fertilizer, new soil. There are a couple of green stalks where I just had like a bunch of random leftover soil, and it wasn't like super nutritious for the plants, so the plants didn't do very well, and they're kind of all in shade. So we have a plan to almost revamp what we're gonna do with the green stalk gardens. We're gonna buy a few pavers and create almost like a little patio of sorts to put all of the green stalks in one area. Most of my green stalks have the spinner base, so you can move it, you can spin it. But I am quickly learning that where we're living now, in our yard, is not flat at all. We had one green stalk after we moved it, because we had to move it to build the raised beds. It fell over with heavy winds, and I lost some garlic and onion starts, which luckily we're going to be starting onions. But it wasn't my main garlic green stalk. It was just one that I had thrown like random leftover garlic in. I had like some random pockets. So I have a plan with that, and whenever we work on that, I will also film that, and it'll be uploaded on YouTube. So what we're gonna do in this video is talk about my plan for the garden, and then we're gonna go ahead and pull out the seeds that I need to start. So for Christmas, Kason got me a plant starting shelf, and it came with lights, and there's 5 tiers. I ordered 2 of the green stalk garden plant start sets. I also ordered, with my Epic Gardening bonus that they gave me for posting on social media, I ordered plant start kits as well. They also sent me some plant start trays. So that'll all be in a video when I work on starting those plants, and you'll get to see all of that, and plus some like milk jugs starting seeds in there, and then I saved like my strawberry containers to start seeds in there, and we're just gonna kind of experiment and do all kinds of starting so that I'm not having to spend like a ton of money. There's easy ways to start plants. I've started plants in solo cups before. I've started plants in the plastic strawberry containers, all kinds of stuff. And I believe I might even have some more plant starting supplies down in the basement. I just haven't pulled all of that out yet. So that'll be in a whole another video. So for the raised beds, since we only have 2 built right now, our plan is to do a potato bed as the primary crop. and then a corn bed as the primary crop. And a little bit of why we're starting with those two main crops in those beds is because we spend a lot of money. I don't want to say a lot of money, but like on our regular grocery trip, we are usually buying potatoes. We eat a good amount of potatoes, a good amount of sweet potatoes. I'll talk about what we're going to do with the sweet potatoes. I would love to start my own, but I want to grow them in a green stalk. I just saw that on their website, and that looks like that would be a really cool thing to do. So for the first bed, it's going to be potatoes. And so I use ChatGPT for all of this because back in the day, before ChatGPT existed, I did all my own research. I have a binder full of information printed out. I have like my Google Drive is just full of stuff. I've saved stuff on YouTube. I've saved stuff on Instagram, just all this information, printed out a bunch of resources. I did a ton of research on what to do with raised beds, green stalk gardens, how to grow things in the ground, so on and so forth. And this was years ago. It really started during 2020, but especially like when we first bought our first house, it took me about 3 years to get that garden really like established, up and running. And of course, right as that 3-year mark hit, we were like, oh, we're gonna move. And so I actually ended up leaving like a lot of sunflowers and things like that in the garden, which I did not mind. I left those raised beds at that house for the next homeowners. We weren't going to bring them to this house because I wanted something a little bit more upgraded. We are still in a neighborhood, but we're on about an acre, and we have a lot more space. We're more secluded, even though we're in a neighborhood. In our last neighborhood, we were very close to our neighbors, and so I could only do so much. So anyway, back to the first raised bed. We eat a lot of potatoes. My plan is to grow enough potatoes that we can cure them and store them in the basement in a good like quantity so that we can eat them throughout the year. I also would love to can some potatoes for easy mashed potatoes, for easy air fried potatoes. We put potatoes in our breakfast burrito meal preps, things like that. So I would love to do that. I also would love to make my own homemade gnocchi for soups and as a pasta alternative. And so we have plans for that, but we do eat quite a bit of potatoes. So I put into ChatGPT and I asked them for help with making sure we are companion planting and we're not planting plants that would take nutrients away from the potatoes, cause disease. I wanted it to be a healthy bed. And I know it might take a few years. I believe that it takes up to 3 years for a person's garden new garden to get established. So I am fully prepared to not have as much production this year. But I put all of this into ChatGPT and it just helps so much. It's clean, it's simple, it's easy to maintain. I can print out the information and put it in my binder, and I know a lot of this information because I've already done the research in the past, but because the last 2 years have kind of been like very limited in what I was doing in the garden, if you're not practicing something all the time, you do forget. And if you're trying to grow multiple things, you might not remember all of that. So I like to have a tangible thing. I have these notes in my phone, so I can just take my phone out there with me. I have them printed out so that I can look over them when I'm inside. I can also take this outside. Nothing's laminated, so it could get dirty and messed up, but like I said, I have all of this saved in my phone as well. So for potatoes, it gave me as the main crop to do 2 long rows, and I put in the size of my raised bed and my gardening zone. So 2 long rows down the center, spaced 12 to 15 inches apart, and you want to plant about 10 to 12 potato plants. That does not mean you're going to just grow 10 to 12 potatoes. Each potato plant can produce multiple potatoes. And so in a raised bed that big, I could get 100 pounds of potatoes or 80 pounds of potatoes or whatever. So this is my first time doing it like that. We'll see what happens. Then I wanted companion plants. I want the plants to be as protected away from pests as possible. I want the soil to be healthy. So the best way to do that is to plant companion plants, and you also get more food. So around the edges, it says to plant lettuce, spinach, radishes, green onions or scallions, and all of those grow really quickly. So you can plant these in phases. There's a word for it, succession plant. And so we can do that, succession plant these plants. Now I will be starting lettuce and spinach and the green onions more than likely from seed. So those will go into the garden already as a plant start, not just from seed, at least for the early spring. So it's winter right now. It's January 19th. So we're getting close to the end of the month. We're in the middle of the month. And I want to have lettuce, spinach ready to be put into the garden when we get our potatoes. Then you want to plant flowers. There are specific flowers that help deter pests and also contribute to soil health. And some of them, according to ChatGPT, and these are very common companion flowers. And I love flowers. They bring in pollinators, which helps with your plant production and growth. And some of those are marigolds and calendula and nasturtium. So the nasturtiums will grow and they'll trail down the side, which will be really pretty. I have chickens, so if they trail down the side and the chickens are out, they can eat the little leaves. Like, I don't mind. The marigolds and calendula, both of those things you can use outside of them just being plants too. Plus they're beautiful. I love flowers. I think that they're great. The calendula, I can take the flowers, dry them, make soap, do all kinds of stuff with them. Then around the ends, you want to do chives, cilantro, basil. Those are things for potatoes that are vertical or climbing herbs. They help deter pests, they help with soil health, and they're great herbs that you can use for seasoning. I love growing basil. Cilantro has been harder for me to grow, but I have done it. And I love cilantro. Chives, love green onions. So that'll be great. Then I want to show you that they gave me a visual layout for this raised bed. And so it has, in the middle, it has the 2 rows of potatoes, and then on the side, like the longer sides, has lettuce, which could be lettuce or spinach. And then around the edges, the shorter sides, you have your marigold, calendula, and then your green onions, your chives, cilantro. And it does give you a key, so it makes it easy. And that will be the first bed. It also, ChatGPT also gives you tips for best results in growing potatoes. It says hill potatoes with compost or straw every 2 to 3 weeks. Water deeply, raised beds dry faster, which we know. And if you're going to grow potatoes in a vertical green stalk garden or a vertical garden, you have to water them even more because those are smaller areas. Those are going to dry out even faster. Harvest radishes and spinach early to reduce competition, which is fine. Those things grow faster than the potatoes. And then mulch edges to suppress weeds and to retain moisture, which is really good information. Like, that's something I knew, but like, you just don't think about. And so I just printed this out, and I have this planner, or this, it's not a planner, it's a little journal that one of my best friends got me for my birthday back in September, and I just haven't used it yet. And so in this planner, I wrote down my 2026 goals and plans. So that included personal health, hobbies, financial goals, gardening, home goals. So in here, I wrote down like all of my 2026 goals, and then I have different sections. So I started with the garden plan breakdown, and I took that information and I wrote it out so that I would remember it. So although I have it printed, I have it in my phone, I will reference those. I did write it out. I like writing stuff out. It helps me remember it and helps me plan things a little bit better. So I did write everything in this little notebook. So that is the first raised bed. The next raised bed is a corn raised bed. This was requested by Kason. We do eat corn. We don't eat it. I mean, we might eat corn. We eat it more in the summer, but maybe like once every few weeks. But he wanted a primarily corn raised bed as the main crop, and he's helping me with all of these projects. He eats too, and I was perfectly fine with that because we can't eat more corn. I mean, we'll freeze it or we'll blanch it and freeze it. We'll can it. Like, we'll do all these other things with it. You can eat it in soups, chilies, as sweet corn. You can make corn casserole. Like, there's obviously so many things that you can do. And I would rather grow our own corn. I've tried in the past and I got hit with corn worms. So we're going to have to really watch that this year. And, if I find some corn worms before they really get into my plant and ruin the plants, the chickens will have some great treats this year. So anyway, so we're going to do the corn in the second raised bed, which is great because we're also going to do the Three Sisters method. The Three Sisters method is corn, beans, and squash. I have had zero success, growing squash. I've been gardening for going on 5 years now. Cannot do it. Don't know why. So this year, we're going to start our squash seeds inside. We're going to get them nice, healthy, established. We're going to harden them off. We're going to put them out. We're going to grow a variety of squash. I'm going to plant so much squash, it's probably going to be unnecessary, because the more you plant, the less you lose. Does that make sense? So if you only plant 10 plants, you could lose all 10. I'm going to be planting as many as I can, because if I lose 10 plants out of 40, well, I still have 30 successful plants. We're going to see. But I'm going to do everything in my power to grow squash successfully. They do make varieties of different squashes that are pest resistant. Vine borers are my absolute nightmare. They're the worst. They are what kills my plants every year. It's not the squash bugs. It is vine borers. They're the worst. We do live in the South, zone 8A. And it's very similar to zone 7B. They're obviously right beside each other. And we used to live in zone 7B, and it was just, the vine borers were absolutely terrible. And a lot of people deal with that. But this year, we're going hard on, trying to prevent that, mitigate it, all of the things. So we're going to do the Three Sisters method. I really hope that this helps. We're going to companion plant like crazy. We're going to do pest control. We're going to do all of the things that hopefully will help the corn grow, the squash grow, and the beans grow. I have had success growing beans, but I've never grown enough for it to be for us to be able to can them, which is what we would want to do, or to dry them. So first, you're going to plant the ChatGPT created this another layout for me, and you're going to plant 3 or 4 rows of the corn stalks, and you want to plant them together to about 12 inches apart, but you don't want to plant corn, then plant something else, then plant corn. You want all the corn to be planted in the same area because they are self-pollinating, and I am going to do my best to go out there and shake them. So what you want to do is go out there once they start producing little corns and shake them, because you'll see the tassels. The tassels are what will have the pollen on them, and it needs to be shaken down into the corn where the kernels are supposed to be, because that is how the kernels are formed. So I will be doing that as well. This year I'm already just putting it out there. My plan is to just really work hard on it. I need to start planting my seeds, starting my seeds in the garage soon, and we will do that. It's just been a very busy, crazy winter so far. So we're going to do the corn, beans. We can do pole beans or bush beans. Bush beans, obviously, they bush out. Pole beans, can use the corn as a pole to grow up. And then you're going to do squash or pumpkins. I will probably do both. And we'll talk about that when we go out there to plan and do our gardening plan when the raised beds get filled and so on and so forth. So the large leaves shade the soil and they suppress the weeds. So hopefully if we have healthy squash plants, that is what will happen. Then you want nitrogen and soil helpers. Because corn is a heavy feeder, beans are a nitrogen fixer. They put nitrogen into the soil, which is what corn needs to be produced healthy and grow tall. And then, so we're going to be planting some peas probably mixed into there. I've had the best plant I've ever had grow are peas. And that was at the last house. I haven't grown them at this house, except for like in a couple of pockets in my green stalk, and they did not do great. In the raised bed, I'm hoping that they do great. Plus the raised beds are in more of the sun than my green stalks were. Then we're going to plant a lot of pest control beneficial plants inside the raised bed and around the raised bed. You best believe we're going all out. Marigolds, nasturtiums, calendula, and dill. So similar to the plants that are in the potato bed for the flowers and the pest control, but adding on dill. I love dill. I love growing dill. I've had a really good success growing dill in my zone 7B and zone 8A. I grew a good amount of dill in my green stalk before. And then some more herbs, again, basil, cilantro, chives, and mint. If you're going to grow mint, do not plant it in a raised bed. Do not plant it anywhere that you have other plants growing, because it will take over. It spreads like wildfire. So if you're going to grow mint, grow it in a container. I grew it in a small container before, and I grew apple mint and spearmint and some other different mints. So I'm going to do the same thing this year, but I'm going to get containers, hopefully that are about this big, 5, 10, 20 gallon size containers. And they're going to be all over the garden to help deter pests. I'm going to put them at the corners, like on the outside of the raised bed, put them in the corners so that they're close to the plants, things like that. Then you can plant some low growing vegetables inside the raised bed that you're doing, the corn and the beans and the squash, spinach, radishes, beets. So the lettuce, spinach, and radishes grow very quickly. Usually, as long as your soil is healthy, they're getting enough water, they're getting enough sun, it's not too hot, they're not going to seed, all the things that can happen. So you can harvest those, replant those, harvest those, replant those. And beets take a little bit longer. I love beets. We don't cook them as much because they're super expensive at the store. But when I've grown them in my raised beds in the past, I do like to juice them. I like to roast them. They're sweet whenever you roast them. And beets do taste different during different seasons. So beets are better in colder months. Just keep that in mind, because I don't really know. There's some sort of chemical in there, makes them sweeter. Anyway, ChatGPT also gave me plants to avoid near corn: tomatoes, brassicas, and fennel. So tomatoes share the same pest, the corn earworm or tomato hornworms. They're not the same type of worm, but they're in the same family. So brassicas, they compete for nutrients. Brassicas need a lot of nutrients. You don't want any of the nutrients being taken away from the corn if that's your primary crop. And then fennel inhibits the growth of many plants. Okay, so I've tried to grow fennel, and I think I grew it in my last raised bed at my last house. But I noticed the fennel did great for the most part. All of the plants around it, except for the peas, suffered. We don't use fennel. We don't really make our own sausage, things like that. So I probably won't ever be planting fennel unless it's by itself in a small container. I don't ever want that because it's not something we use all the time, I don't want it to inhibit the growth of the plants that we do eat and do use. So, and then it gives you tips for growing corn. Plant corn in blocks, not single rows. So 4s, 6s, 8s, things like that, or however many inside your bed. You kind of want to plant them together. So we already talked about that. Beans can go in after corn is 6 to 12 inches tall, because you don't want the bean, they'll grow fast too. You don't want the bean to outgrow the corn and then suffocate the corn and the corn not do very well. Squash and lettuce around the edges to keep soil cool. And then it is a heavy feeder, so you want to add compost before planting. You want to make sure you continue to fertilize it, and just make sure you're doing these things. So I'm going to make sure that I'm doing these things. I've grown corn in the past, had these itty bitty little corns. They were coming in really nice. They weren't ready. And then corn worms. So we're going to hopefully, Lord willing, not have to deal with that as much. We're going to plant a lot more than we have in the past. And then it gives me some more options to help. It created the layout for me, told me what to do plant spacing wise. And then it even gives you, it gave me the 3 sisters for the squash part. It says you can plant bush squash or small vining varieties. So zucchini, delicata, acorn, or butternut, 1 plant max. So you don't want to, I guess, plant multiple squash plants per corn. I'm not sure. It says 1 squash plant at each short end of the bed. So I'm assuming those are bigger plants. If you've seen successful squash plants grow, they get huge. And then you want to let the vines trail out over the edges, which will be good because chickens, they can eat squash leaves, but you don't want them to eat your squash plants that are growing on the vine. So we will have to do a little bit of something. I really want to get this portable fence for them, so that they're not always coming out towards the raised bed, or maybe put some sort of fencing up around the raised bed area. We'll just have to figure that out. And then you can add on nasturtiums, marigolds, radishes, and you want to harvest the radishes early, before the squash spreads. And then it tells you what not to add to the corn bed. Tomatoes or peppers, brassicas, and more than 2 squash plants, I guess, per area. So you want to make sure you're spacing those squash plants out a good amount. But in that raised bed, like, I'm going to be able to plant multiple squash plants, and as long as the spacing is accurate or pretty close to accurate. You just don't want each squash plant to be planted so close together that they're competing. We'll talk about that more when we go to plant. You want to amend the soil heavily. Corn is a heavy feeder. We talked about that. Water deeply and consistently, especially during tasseling, which means they're putting on their tassels. That's when the stalks start to grow. They need as much water as possible. And mulch once the squash is established. That will keep the weeds and things down. If wind is an issue, stake corn plants lightly to like a wooden post. And then it also gave me a layout again for this, and it gave me a key, and then I also wrote one out in my little journal. Okay, so we don't have the bed for this built yet, but I would like to have it built soon, or at least before summer, and I need to start, or late spring, and I think that we're going to work on getting that done. But the next bed I would like to be a tomato bed. I want to can tomatoes to be able to make pasta sauce, to put in chilies, to put in spaghetti, make my own spaghetti sauce, marinara sauce, things like that. I would love to do that. That's more of how we use tomatoes, is in sauces. So I did the same thing. I asked ChatGPT, here's the size of my bed, here's my zone, and what are the best things to plant with tomato plants. Basil, marigolds, and nasturtiums, garlic, chives, green onions, and mint. Again, mint you want to plant in a separate container. Those are pest repelling companions for tomatoes. Then you can also plant carrots, lettuce, spinach, radishes, beans, peppers, and asparagus. So peppers have similar growing needs, and I have grown peppers and tomatoes together in the same bed before, and they do fine as long as you are fertilizing the soil frequently, or like maybe once a month or once every 6 weeks, to make sure that they have enough soil, or you're amending the soil to make sure they have enough nutrients in the soil. You can plant asparagus. So asparagus, though, you have to keep in mind it takes a lot longer for it to grow, and once it's in a bed, it's in a bed unless you pull it out and replant it somewhere else. We eat a good amount of asparagus, but that's just not a plant I'm willing to put my time and effort into this year. If I can get my garden established over the next few years, then I believe we will be able to plant like an all asparagus bed of some sort. But that's just not something that I'm in the market for or interested in doing right now. Some flowers that help: calendula, borage, and sweet alyssum. I do have seeds for all of those things, so we will be doing that. And then, so the good thing about tomatoes is they have a ton of companion plants. The carrots, the lettuce, the peppers, the flowers, like those are all great things. We will eat those. We eat carrots all the time. You just don't want to plant potatoes, fennel, or even walnuts, which is super interesting that it put that on here, because aren't walnuts a tree? Don't they grow on a tree? I don't know. Anyways, a good simple companion planting combo is tomato, basil, marigolds, and lettuce. And then it did a breakdown for this bed in a little bit of a different way. So it told you like the north side, south side, how much sun to get, if you're using indeterminate tomatoes, how much to space them, where to plant your basil, how many plants to use. And so it kind of gave you all of that information, how many plants for each plant variety. So 2 to 3 basil plants, so on and so forth. Tells you what to grow on the plant on the south side of the plant. But it did also give you gave me a little bit of a map breakdown, a visual layout. It says it on here. So when I transferred this over into my journal, I did a little bit more, so that for me, I know what I want to plant there, and how much. So it also gives you the planting timeline. So this actually was for zone 7B, but I'm in 8A now, and so it's very similar, but I need to recheck the dates. But it says early spring, you can do lettuce, spinach, radishes, onions, which we're going to start some onions out in the garage. After the last frost, tomatoes, basil, marigolds. We're going to start our own tomatoes. I've had a lot of success starting my own tomato plants and pepper plants. It also gave me, pro tips for success: mulch heavily once soil warms, prune lower tomato leaves for airflow. So the more leaves and the bushier the plant is, especially at the base, the more likely you are to have disease. So you want to think powdery mildew and things like that, because those leaves will hold on to moisture. And so if you're watering your raised bed at the ground level, you do not want to water. I know if it rains, it's going to be watering them from the top, but if you want to water them at ground level to reduce the risk of disease. And if you have all these leaves hanging down there, then it's going to get the plants aren't going to be healthy and survive. They're not going to produce as much fruit. They could even completely die off. So you want to trim those lower leaves. Plus, it helps push the energy into producing fruit and not producing more leaves if you trim those up. And then you want to succession plant lettuce every 2 to 3 weeks in the spring. Water at soil level to prevent disease. Then it gave me for the fall layout as well. And it just gave me some information on that. You can plant kale, carrots, spinach, garlic, green onions, marigolds, things like that. So for the fourth bed that we have, I didn't know what to do because I felt like the fourth bed that we're planning to have, we have potatoes in those companion plants. We have corn in those companion plants. We have tomatoes in those companion plants that we're planting. So I was like, what is something fun? So I want to do a lot of flowers. I want to do some other fun things. We can use a cattle panel trellis. And I was like, you know what? We love cantaloupe. Let's do a melon bed. I did the same thing I did for those ones. And it just gave me a list of the pollinators, attractors for companion plants. And a lot of these are very similar. So you have marigolds, nasturtiums, borage, calendula. For vegetables, you have beans, peas, radishes, lettuce, spinach, carrots, onions, garlic, chives. And then herbs, dill, cilantro, oregano, mint. And then it tells you what not to plant near it. Potatoes, other melons, squash too close. Strong competitors like corn, but they'll be in a completely different raised bed. And then it gave me a breakdown, what to plant where. And so in this one, it has watermelon and cantaloupe, which would be great because I love both of those things. And then it also gave me a variety for the watermelon and other specialty melons that you could put in here. So, and that's pretty much it. It just gives you a breakdown. Again, this was based on Zone 7B. And then I have, but I'm in 8A. So similar growing seasons. Okay, the next thing I use ChatGPT to do is, what do I need to start when? What do I need to start indoors on my seed starting trays and when? And I was like, I want to just list it out, simplest way, when to start it and when to put it outside. So the first one it gave me is alliums, which are long season crops, onions and leeks. Love onions, love leeks. I have this potato leek soup that we make. It is so good. Kason loves it. I love it. Then it has your cool season vegetables, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, which we love all of those things. We eat broccoli frequently, but we would probably do broccolini over like a big broccoli head or like baby broccoli. Cauliflower we love eating raw cauliflower, roasting it in the oven. Lettuce, obviously, and then parsley. I use parsley whenever I roast chicken, so that's nice. Peppers, which are your warm season crops, and some herbs, parsley, herbs and greens. Parsley, lettuce, leafy greens, other herbs like basil, chives, and cilantro. And then it gives you timing notes, when to start cool season versus warm season crops. And then it gives you tips using grow lights and things like that. Average last frost dates for my area. I put in my zip code and it just spit out all of this. And then it also gave me like a list, when to start when, the crop, the why, and the timing. And it does that. So it starts January 15th, which is when I sent that into ChatGPT, through the 31st. And it literally said start immediately. Thought that was funny. So right now it wants me to start onions from seed, leeks, early cool season brassicas, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, parsley, and early herbs like chives. I have seeds for all of those things, so we're going to go through that, pull those out, and I'll talk about what seeds I'm going to try to plant and when. In February, it has us wanting to start broccoli. If we haven't already started them in January, it wants us to start them in February. So broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, kale, collards. I love kale, love collards. I don't eat them as much because honestly, sometimes they get expensive at the grocery store, and Kason doesn't super love them, but I do like them. And you can always blanch them, freeze them, put them in smoothies. Not the collards necessarily, but you could can those. Lettuce and other leafy greens. That's the first half of February, so the 1st through the 14th. Then the second half of February, it wants us to start indoors tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, basil, oregano, and sage. And then in March, it wants us to start warm season flowers, zinnias, marigolds, and then direct sow early greens if the soil is workable. And so that's March 1st through the 14th. So we got to get our soil and get those raised beds up and running by the beginning of March. And then it gives us March 15th through the 25th Prep for outdoor plantings. Begin hardening off seeds started earlier. Direct sow crops that don't transplant well: peas, radishes, spinach, and carrots. You never want to start carrots from seed in a seed starting tray. Don't even buy them at the groceries or at the hardware store, wherever you get your plants. Don't do it. It's not going to turn out well. You're probably not going to have a lot of success. Carrots don't need to be planted very deep. They need to be planted in like a quarter of an inch. They need to be watered heavily to germinate. Whenever you go through and you thin them out, because you want to plant a lot at once, you go through and thin them out, thin out the ones that don't look as healthy. You'll do a couple of thinnings, and then you don't want to pull those up because you're going to mess with the roots, and then your carrots are going to start growing. If you mess with the roots, that plant is just a no-go. And then late March, beginning of April, so March 25th through the 5th, once frost danger is mostly past, you can transplant seedlings outdoors: broccoli, cabbage, kale, tomato, peppers, eggplants after night temps stay warm. Direct sow warm season crops: beans, corn, squash, cucumbers, and soil. That is one thing I did not see on my list. Cucumbers. I'll have to go back and see what I can plant with cucumbers, or what I have planned and where I can plant cucumbers. Now I do have my green stock gardens, and that's like a whole different thing. So I haven't done a lot of planning for that yet, but I do have a resource that I will show you in a minute. And then it just gives me quick tips. Count back from your estimated last frost: 8 to 10 weeks for slower growers, 6 to 8 weeks for tomatoes and warm season flowers, 4 to 6 weeks for cool season crops. Hardening seedlings off 1 to 2 weeks before transplanting. Use grow lights or bright window for indoor seed starts. And then it did create a PDF for me. Again, this is a little different because this is for Zone 7B and I'm in AA, but this is for the Three Sisters method. So it's a little bit of a visual, and this is also for the Three Sisters method. All right. So that is all I use ChatGPT for this time. I'm sure I will use it plenty more. I wanted to show you really quick a couple of resources that I have for my vertical gardens. So when I ordered those seed starting kits, they sent me, and I ordered 2, and they sent me this little booklet, and it's to plan out, and with instructions and advice, tips, to plan out what seeds. So this is how the seed starting tray is designed, to plan out what seeds I want to start and when. So once my first round of seeds are planted out in the garden, I'm going to start more for the fall or whatever. And so they give you a few pages, and I got 2 books because it was 1 per seed starting tray. And they have a QR code in the back that you can scan for more information. It gives you before you begin tips and to plant tips. And then if you ever had any questions, you could email Green Stalk Garden. They also send you in like every order a Green Stalk Garden vertical planter instructions for the leaf or the original, or it's for the original and the leaf. And then it gives you a planting guide and what to plant in each one. So the original pockets are deeper than the leaf pockets. And then it's like step by step how to plant up a green stalk garden. There's also a ton of YouTube videos. There's a lot of resources on their website, how to use the green stalk garden. And they offer a growing and a green stalk from seed to harvest little guide. It is free. And it's a little bit different, a little bit more in depth than that little booklet that I just showed you. And you can print this off. So I will be using this to plan out and to figure out what I'm gonna do in my green stalk garden. I just haven't really been through that yet. I know that one of my gardens is all garlic right now, so I can't really do anything with that green stalk until October when they're ready. Or June, I'm sorry, until June when they're ready. And then honestly, at that point, I'll probably just plant like fast growing plants, because in October, I'll need to replant garlic. I'll probably replant it a different green stalk though, because you want to kind of rotate them so the soil doesn't get diseased. So I will be doing that. one of my new green stalks, my yellow one, is going to be all strawberries. I need to get that completely filled with soil, and I need to get going on ordering my strawberries. I am on a wait list for them to tell me when the strawberries are in. I'm going to do bare roots. That's what I've done in the past. So I'm going to do bare root strawberries. That's what I've done in the past. And I need to get those ordered soon. I also need to get seed potatoes ordered, probably sweet potato slips ordered, and my soil ordered for the raised beds. I'm going to use the soil cubes. I don't know if y'all have seen that before, but that is going to be the soil that I try this year. And then every so often, probably at the end of beginning of next season, I'll top it off with the Happy Frog soil. That's what I primarily use in my green stalks. So I'll end up topping probably all of my green stalks off with the Happy Frog. All right.